It started like any other day at St. Mary's Hospital. The air outside was thick with summer heat, and inside, the buzz of activity never slowed. Doctors moved between patients, nurses adjusted monitors, and the hum of routine echoed through the halls. But just beyond the automatic glass doors of the emergency room, something unusual was unfolding, and no one noticed it at first. A stray dog, thin to the bone with patches of fur missing, limped across the parking lot. Its ears twitched at every sound, and its ribs moved visibly beneath its dusty coat. It wasn't just wandering. It had something in its mouth. Clenched tightly between its teeth was a large black garbage bag. Torn and dragging behind him, the bag scraped across the pavement with a low, grating sound. The dog stopped near the entrance, looked around nervously, then tugged the bag forward again. A car horn honked nearby. The dog flinched but didn't run. Instead, it kept pulling, step by careful step, toward the sliding doors of the emergency wing. Inside, a young nurse named Leah stood at the reception desk, sipping a cold coffee and flipping through patient files. Through the glass, she noticed movement. At first, she thought someone had dumped trash outside. But then she saw the dog. And the bag. She leaned closer to the glass, narrowing her eyes. "Hey, Tom," she called to the security guard nearby. "Do you see that?" Tom turned, frowning. "Yeah, that dog's been hanging around here the last few nights. I've chased it off a few times." Leah pressed her hand to the glass. The dog looked straight at her, eyes dark and alert. It didn't bark, didn't growl. It just stood still, as if waiting. Then it gave the bag one last tug and sat beside it, head low, tail still. Something about the way the dog acted sent a chill down her spine. This wasn't random. The dog wasn't begging for food or looking for shelter. It had brought something, and it wanted someone to see. "Tom," Leah said again, this time more urgently. "That bag." It moved. Tom stepped closer to the door. The bag twitched. Once. Then again. The sounds of the hospital faded behind them. Both Leah and Tom stared at the worn garbage bag in stunned silence. Then, from inside, came a sound neither of them expected. A soft, muffled cry. A baby's cry. For a moment, no one moved. The sound had been faint but unmistakable. The tiny, breathy cry of a newborn. Leah's heart jumped into her throat. She turned to Tom, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you hear that?" Tom didn't answer. He was already reaching for the door, his eyes locked on the motionless garbage bag. As the glass doors slid open, a wave of heat swept in. The stray dog stood up immediately, backing away just a few steps, but never taking its eyes off the bag. Leah knelt beside it, hesitating only for a second. The bag was grimy, half-torn, and something inside was wrapped in what looked like a thin towel or blanket. She reached forward with trembling hands and peeled back the plastic. What she saw made her breath catch. There, nestled inside the torn layers of trash bag and cloth, was a tiny baby girl. Her skin was pale, lips slightly blue, and she looked no more than a few days old. Her eyes were shut, her limbs curled close to her body, and her chest rose and fell with shallow, struggling breaths. The faintest cry escaped her lips once more before she fell silent again. Leah didn't think, she acted. "Call the code pink," she shouted over her shoulder. "Get a warmer. Now." Two other nurses sprinted through the doors as Tom barked into his radio. In a flash, the quiet moment erupted into chaos. A rolling infant warmer was rushed outside. Leah gently lifted the baby, cradling her close, careful not to jostle her tiny frame. The moment she held her, Leah felt tears spring to her eyes. The child was ice cold, her fingers curled tightly into little fists, but she was alive. Barely. Inside the ER, the team worked quickly. Warm blankets were draped over the baby, monitors attached, and oxygen gently delivered. One doctor whispered instructions while another adjusted the tiny IV line. Outside, through the glass, the stray dog watched it all silently, tail flicking just once. No one could explain it. Not the doctor, not the nurses, not even Tom, the security guard. A stray dog had dragged a baby in a trash bag to the hospital. And if it had been even 10 minutes later, the outcome might have been very different. And yet here they were, standing in the middle of a miracle, trying to understand how a dog had done what no one else did. Saved a life. The emergency room buzzed with urgency as the tiny newborn was stabilized. Alarms beeped in rhythm with her fragile heartbeat while warm blankets cocooned her body. The child, now gently breathing, remained under the close watch of a pediatric team. Meanwhile, outside, the stray dog hadn't moved. It lay on the hot pavement just beyond the glass, eyes fixed on the hospital doors. Inside, Leah stood frozen. She had seen difficult cases before, but this was different. The baby hadn't been brought in by a parent or paramedic. She had been left, discarded like trash, and yet, by some twist of fate, a stray animal had delivered her straight into the arms of help. Who would do this? A young resident whispered under her breath as she monitored the baby's vitals. Leah didn't answer. Her mind was spinning. She kept replaying the moment she heard the cry, the twitch of the bag, the way the dog hadn't barked or panicked. It had waited, as if it knew exactly what it was doing. In the corner of the room, Tom stood silently with the radio still clipped to his vest. He glanced outside and then toward the pediatric team. "I'm going to check the cameras," he muttered. "See if we can find out where that dog came from. Maybe it'll help explain anything." Leah nodded but stayed put. Her eyes were on the baby now, her tiny hands resting near her face, her chest slowly rising under the warm towel. There were no bruises, no visible injuries, just signs of neglect, the kind that could have been fatal if not for one determined animal. 10 minutes later, Tom returned, phone in hand. "You need to see this," he said, motioning her over. In the security room, Tom played back the footage. The video was grainy, but clear enough to tell the story. The dog had appeared near a dumpster across the street just after 3:00 p.m. It sniffed at a black garbage bag, circled it twice, and then, carefully, almost hesitantly, began tugging at it with its teeth. It didn't rip it open, Tom said quietly. It didn't try to eat it. It just took it. They watched as the dog crossed the parking lot slowly, the bag dragging behind it. Cars drove past. People walked by. No one stopped. But the dog never gave up. It reached the hospital, paused, and dropped the bag. Then it sat and waited. That's when Leah realized this dog hadn't just stumbled onto the baby. It had chosen to save her. The emergency room had handled countless crises, accidents, heart attacks, even life-threatening trauma. But this was different. This wasn't just a medical emergency. It was something deeper, something human. As the team worked to stabilize the newborn, the mood in the room had shifted. The urgency was still there, but it was laced with something else. Awe. "Temp is rising slowly," one nurse reported, adjusting the warmer. "Let's keep her skin-to-skin contact limited for now," the pediatrician instructed. "She needs heat, not handling." The baby lay on a soft blanket inside a heated infant warmer, her skin pale but regaining color. A heart monitor blinked steadily, a reassuring sign. Her cry, though faint, had returned, a small but powerful signal that she wasn't giving up. Leah stood near the warmer, arms crossed tightly across her chest. She couldn't take her eyes off the child. There was something haunting about how close this little girl had come to disappearing forever. She had been discarded like refuse, left in a plastic bag with no note, no name, just silence. Until that dog arrived. "Did you see how carefully he carried her?" Tom said from behind her. "He didn't even tear the towel." Leah nodded, not speaking. Her thoughts kept circling the same impossible question. How did that dog know to come here? Not just anywhere, but to a hospital, to the very doors of the emergency room. Across the room, the doctor finished charting notes and approached Leah quietly. She's stable for now. A bit dehydrated and cold, but we've seen worse. If she'd been out there another 30 minutes, though." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Leah glanced toward the glass doors. The stray dog was still there, lying in the same spot, as if it were waiting for news. Its ears perked up when it saw her through the glass. "I think it knew," she said softly. "I really think it knew she needed help." The doctor looked outside, then back at the child. "Well, whatever the reason, that animal saved a life today. That's more than most people can say." Moments later, a social worker arrived, briefed quickly by the pediatrician. The infant would be transferred to neonatal care for observation, and law enforcement would take over from there. But even as the room slowly emptied and the adrenaline wore off, Leah remained at the warmer for one last moment. She gently touched the baby's tiny hand. "You're safe now," she whispered, "and you're not alone." Outside, the dog lifted its head, like it understood. By the next morning, the hospital's quiet halls had transformed into a place of whispered excitement. Word of the stray dog's rescue had spread beyond the emergency room, weaving its way through every department. Nurses from other floors stopped by just to catch a glimpse of the footage. Doctors paused between rounds to ask, "Is it true?" And at the heart of it all was a 15-second video clip that no one could stop watching. Security guard Tom had uploaded the footage to a private hospital server the night before. Leah, still unable to sleep, had sent a short version to her cousin, a local journalist. Within hours, it was everywhere. The clip was simple: a stray dog dragging a battered garbage bag across a hospital parking lot. It stops at the sliding ER doors, lays the bag down, and sits. The camera catches the moment the bag shifts. The rest is left to the imagination. But the image was powerful enough to spark a storm of reaction. By noon, the video had gone viral. Headlines raced through social media. "Stray dog delivers abandoned baby to hospital. Staff shocked. Guardian angel on 4 legs. Hospital dog saves newborn. Incredible instinct. Stray dog's heroic act caught on camera." At first, the hospital PR team hesitated to comment. But after thousands of shares, news crews showed up at the front steps of Street Mary's, and the story could no longer be contained. They issued a brief statement confirming the baby was recovering and that the dog had been safely taken into care. That only made the public more curious. Animal shelters received dozens of calls from people asking to adopt the dog. Rescue groups offered to sponsor medical care, food, even obedience training. Strangers dropped off toys, dog beds, and care packages at the hospital, labeled simply for the hero dog. But perhaps the most touching part of all was the name that started trending alongside the video: Guardian. Someone had commented, "He didn't just find her. He guarded her. Until someone came. That's not a stray. That's a guardian." Leah smiled when she saw it. She hadn't named the dog, but somehow it felt right. The name stuck. Even the hospital staff started using it casually in conversation. Has Guardian eaten yet? Is Guardian still outside? People were beginning to see the dog not as a stray, but as something more, a symbol of instinct, loyalty, and something almost impossible to define. A kind of love that asked for nothing in return. By the end of the week, the name Guardian wasn't just a nickname. It had become a badge of honor. The once forgotten stray, once avoided and chased away from alleyways and sidewalks, was now a local legend. His face, with those alert brown eyes and scarred muzzle, appeared on news stations, social media, and even printed on handmade posters placed around the hospital entrance. But Guardian didn't seem to care about the attention. After the baby had been taken inside that first day, he had remained near the ER entrance, sleeping beside the flower beds or curled in a quiet corner of the lot. No leash, no commands, just a silent presence, as though he was standing watch. Animal control had visited the next morning, prepared to take him to the shelter for safety and care. But when the van arrived, something unexpected happened. The hospital staff gathered in protest. "He's not going anywhere," Leah said firmly. "He's with us now," Tom added, folding his arms. The animal control officer blinked in surprise. "You want to keep a stray at a hospital?" "He's not just a stray," another nurse chimed in. "He's Guardian." A compromise was reached. The local veterinarian offered to take Guardian in temporarily, giving him a full medical checkup, vaccinations, and a proper bath. The vet even clipped his nails and gave him a bright blue collar with a silver tag engraved with one word: Guardian. During his brief stay, the vet noted that Guardian had old scars, likely from years of surviving the streets, but nothing that required surgery or major treatment. He was lean but healthy, tired but strong. Within days, Guardian returned to the hospital grounds. Staff had already prepared a shaded doghouse near the side entrance, complete with a soft blanket and bowls of food and water. He took to it immediately, but spent most of his time lying in front of the ER doors, tail thumping when familiar faces walked by. Patients began to notice. Children asked to pet him. Visitors snapped pictures. Someone even left a tiny bouquet of flowers beside his bowl with a note: "Thank you for saving her." For many, Guardian became more than a dog. He became hope in a world that often forgot how to care. He didn't need to speak. He didn't need to ask for praise. His actions had already said enough. And though he didn't know it, Guardian's life had changed just as much as the baby's. While the world celebrated Guardian's heroic act, behind the scenes, a different kind of work was unfolding. Quiet, difficult, and full of unanswered questions. Local authorities had launched a formal investigation into the baby's abandonment. The goal was clear: find out who left the child in a trash bag and why. Detectives canvassed the area around the dumpster where Guardian had first found the bag. Surveillance footage from nearby stores was pulled. Witnesses were interviewed. Piece by piece, the timeline began to form. A grainy video from a gas station camera finally revealed a figure, hooded, hurried, walking away from the dumpster around 3 a.m., carrying something heavy. The image wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough to point investigators in the right direction. Within days, a young woman was brought in for questioning. She was barely out of her teens, frightened and visibly shaken. She didn't deny the act. Through tears, she confessed. She had hidden the pregnancy from everyone, terrified of judgment, abandoned by the baby's father, and unsure what else to do. She claimed she left the baby near the dumpster in desperation, thinking someone would find her quickly. But it wasn't a person who found the child. It was Guardian. The woman was placed in protective custody, and social services stepped in to handle the rest. While legal proceedings would follow, the priority became clear: ensuring the baby, now named Hope by hospital staff, had a safe and loving future. Hope remained in neonatal care under close observation, and despite her rough start, she was growing stronger every day. Nurses visited her even during their breaks. Leah, in particular, spent hours sitting beside her crib, reading softly and gently holding her tiny hand. Meanwhile, the hospital board made an announcement. Guardian would not be up for adoption to the public. Instead, he would remain with the hospital in a special capacity. A trained therapy dog program would begin, with Guardian at its heart. The news was met with celebration. Donations poured in to support the new initiative. Messages came from all over the country: letters, emails, even handmade drawings from children who had heard the story in school. The bond between the baby and Guardian was something everyone felt. Though they had come from two entirely different worlds, their lives had collided at a moment when both needed a miracle. And now, both were healing, side by side, under the care of those who refused to let either be forgotten. 1 month later, the hospital had changed, not in its structure or staff, but in its spirit, where once the automatic doors of the emergency room had only welcomed the injured and the ill, now they also welcomed something else: hope. Guardian had become a fixture, not just of the hospital, but in the hearts of everyone who worked there. Each morning, he waited patiently as staff arrived, wagging his tail and accepting the occasional belly rub before settling into his spot near the pediatric wing. Children lit up when they saw him. Nurses brought him treats. Volunteers sat with him during breaks, telling him stories he couldn't understand, but always listened to. But the most meaningful moments came when Guardian was allowed to visit the NICU, where little Hope still rested under gentle care. Dressed in a tiny pastel onesie, Hope was thriving. Her cheeks had filled out, her eyes had begun to track movement, and her fingers grasped instinctively at anything close. When Guardian entered the room, she turned her head as if she knew. Leah stood by her crib, smiling. "She recognizes him," she said softly. Every time he comes near, she calms down. Her breathing slows. She even tries to reach for him now. The pediatrician nodded. "It's remarkable. There's a connection there. No one could explain it. How a baby, left alone in the dark, could be saved by a stray. How a dog, with no home or voice, could become the symbol of something so pure." The Therapy Dog program launched officially that week. Local news returned to cover the story once again, this time focusing not just on what Guardian had done, but what he continued to do. He visited children recovering from surgeries, sat with anxious parents, and even comforted elderly patients in the waiting room. His presence didn't erase the pain of sickness or sadness, but it softened it, made it easier to bear. On the day Hope was finally cleared for discharge into foster care, the entire ER team gathered to say goodbye. Leah held her in her arms, swaddled and warm. She bent down so Guardian could sniff her one last time. "She's going to be okay," Leah whispered. "Because of you." Guardian licked the baby's foot once, gently, then looked up with calm eyes. It was as if he understood that his job was done. But as Leah turned to walk Hope out into the world, she knew something deeper. Guardian hadn't just saved a life. He had rewritten both of theirs.